Yeah.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reiki Crossroads and Connections, an ongoing exploration of the lifestyles and pathways that help you to live a life that is grounded, spacious, and connected. And we're doing that through conversations between a Reiki teacher and a wide range of magicians, of artists, of healers, of rewilders, and of life givers in many capacities. And if you've been with me on my channel for any length of time, you might know that I have a special place in my heart for bringing the intersections between the work and the unseen realm, in my case, primarily through the system of Reiki, and work in the seen realm of the natural world, of really bringing together within our own body, within our own experience, that sweet, sweet blending of the unseen and the seen by working with plants, with animals, with nature. Truly, for me, it's almost like the most effective shortcut to getting back into that place of being grounded, spacious, and connected, of being truly in touch with the web of life, to literally work with the web of life with our hands, with our heart, with our voices. And so I love having conversations with folks who are really centering the practice of working with the natural world, of working with food, of working with plants in their spiritual work and in the work that they are giving to the world. And so I'm really excited today to bring in a friend, to bring in an ally who is doing this work. So welcome, Libre Booker.
Hi. Hello.
Hi. So you are working in this beautiful intersection between energy work and working with food, with plants, with gardening, and with providing with people a model for how to bring themselves stability and health from the inside out. You're the founder of Living Green Garden, which fosters holistic plant-based healing through gardening, through whole food, plant-based cooking, and energy healing. You're a certified Reiki Master, we have that in common, and
Mhm.
uses herbs and high vibrational energy practice to help overwhelmed, busy adults to heal and to come into well-being. And I'm sure many folks can relate to that description: overwhelmed, busy adults who definitely can use support coming into well being. So I want to thank you, firstly, for doing that work. And as we settle in here to this conversation, I want to just start by asking, how are you doing today?
I really appreciate that question. I'm doing great. I'm I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you today?
I am also doing well today. As I was sharing a little bit before we jumped on, I've been in a little bit of a discombobulated space. Things have just been a little bit hard with my business and just kind of figuring out some pathways, some adjustments, and that can leave a person a little disoriented. And so I've really been this week looking for, okay, where are the places that I need to shift my attention to help come back into that space of being grounded and spacious and connected. So I actually spent
Mhm.
quite a bit of time in my garden yesterday, and gosh, that helped. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then being
definitely.
in this conversation is another way of doing that. So I'm really excited to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I believe a lot of people can relate to exactly what you're going through. So, a lot of us, like I have compassion because people are going through it. There's a big shift that is happening now, and we are here for it. So, things are nice and comfortable, but
Right.
now it's like things are like, okay, okay. Like we were saying before, it's yeah, it's a very exciting time, but but a lot of growth and learning
Yes.
happening during this time. Absolutely. I'm with you.
I love that you bring that forward, right? This time of like discomfort and, where we're kind of being pushed out of that space of comfort. I think this is I mean, really an essential life skill, right? To be able to be with discomfort. And I feel like a
Well,
lot of the work that I certainly relate to this in terms of why I do my work, and I'm curious how this relates to you. But a lot of the purpose of it is to help us develop strategies for being with discomfort and being in those uncomfortable places where we don't know the right path or we don't have what we need entirely in that moment, and to really be able to feel spacious and relaxed even when things are putting us under pressure. And so I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, because what I'd love to invite you to share with us is a little bit of how you came to this work, to by way of describing the work that you're doing at Living Green Garden, to tell us a little bit about the threads in your life that you followed to bring you here to this alchemy of energy work, of food focused work, and really what that has meant to you.
yeah, that's a great question. I really like that question. Well, it started with gardening. It started with me being out when I'm a little girl,
Mm,
eating like fresh tomatoes, like right in the garden. My mom, she would let me get some salt and we would just pick them, and it was like the best thing. So it started as a little girl just being in the garden, and that was just always a special place. And then I got to a point that I'm like, well, gardening is like, it's the way to go. So as far as security, so it started with the physical first, actually, but the more I evolved, because we're all, evolving constantly, the more I evolved, gardening became a spiritual practice as well. But it started with the physical, which, we're at this time where, we focus more on the physical than the spiritual, but we're getting there. Uh, so it was just like, for security, if I know how to grow my own food, if I have a place to stay and I can grow my own food, then I'm sustainable. I'm fine. I just need land and some seeds, and I'm going to be okay. So I'm like, this, I need to know. So that's what pulled me to gardening. But then, like, being out in the garden, that practice of being in nature centered me. So it evolved from being solely about growing food to, this is like part of like my soul now. It's just like, it felt like it was part of me.
mm,
Uh and so there's that. And I've always have been interested in like eating more plants, even as a child. Like, I don't actually really like meat. So I eat meat, just very little of it, but I actually don't really like meat. And I never really have. I've always been very fascinated with eating plant-based foods. And I learned a whole food plant-based diet that actually helped heal me physically. I'm a flexitarian, so like I said, I do eat meat, but the majority of my diet, I intend to be whole food plant-based diet, which is like the only diet that is like in the research to reverse heart disease.
mm,
So I had like all the chronic illnesses leading up to heart disease. I was a diabetic. I had high blood pressure. And then here came the high cholesterol. And when I started to eat a whole food plant-based diet, my body naturally healed. So it just comes to me, it's like the healing is in plants. And we hear of like, old remedies of people getting herbs and using herbs. She's like, you sick, let's, get this, let's go get the herbs of the land to heal. So I'm like, the answer for like a lot of what's going on is plants, and that's getting back to Mother Earth and getting back to nature. And not do I believe, I know in my heart that the more we get back to nature, which we think we're not nature, but we actually are nature. We've removed ourselves from who we are. once we get back to who we are, which is nature, which is Mother Earth, a lot of this, even like politically, all of this will get into balance. We've just, we have, we've removed ourselves from Mother Earth. So that's really, and that, so that is the energetic part of it. The gardening plants are high vibrational foods. Gardening, being out in nature, is a high vibrational practice. So the more we get people to nature, to plants, to eating plants, which high vibrational foods, and raise their vibration, we will be at peace, and the earth will heal. The earth will heal because we will be healed. So that's what's led me here.
There's so much, wow, there's so much in there. So there's a few threads here that I want to continue braiding together. You know, firstly, this idea of coming to the garden as a very physical, you know, body-based experience, right? The pleasure of eating straight from the garden, the pleasure of simply being in the garden, and the physicality of it, both in terms of working with our body to work with the garden, and the impact that it has on our body, you know, from being in a natural space to the impact on our body of eating in this way, as you're describing. And the way
Mhm.
that that can lead us into the unseen, into the spiritual aspects of things. I really do resonate with that. Um, and you know, that has some mirroring to my own experience. I didn't grow up with the garden. I came to it in my early 20s, and I came to it as a direct response to trauma, like immediately following 9/11. And I was like
Oh,
22, 23. I had a little baby. You know, that moment in our collective history, you know, as it did for many people, really shifted my mindset to a mindset of fear, and a mindset of anger, as I saw the repercussions of that, the actions that our country took in response, and then the years of war that followed, right? There was this very visceral like shift into a fear anger state, and I like
mm,
got very politically radicalized, and it was just a whole thing that like ultimately really, you know, ran my fire way too hot and kind of burned me out. And in the midst of that, I remember very distinctly this feeling of like, I need to put my hands to something that is life-giving and that's present. That's like right
ah,
here, right now,
yeah,
you know, that is good, just right here in this
yeah,
moment where I am, because my mind was just like in all of the places where all of the bad things were happening. And so that's what, you know, I'm like, well, I have a little patch, like you said, a little patch of ground. I can put some tomato plants in the
yes,
and that was
yes.
the first time I'd ever even considered gardening. It just wasn't something I was raised with. But, you know,
Mhm.
me and my toddler and my ex-husband, we just like jumped on that train and rode it, you know, and,
Yeah,
you know, I never looked back. But what I realized over time was just as you're describing, that that interface with the natural world, that slow realization that, you know, it's obvious, but also not so obvious because we don't actually behave as it's so. But as you say, that we are nature. My
yeah,
Reiki teacher often says, you're not in nature, you are nature, right? And
exactly,
that's a mindset
exactly,
shift that like it seems simple, but it changes everything
exactly.
when we like resist this collective act of forgetting this fact,
Mhm.
right? Like at a certain point, humanity like started stepping away to say, I can actually opt out of being nature. Like I can
Yeah,
create conditions in the world where I don't actually have to participate directly, or I can participate on my own terms. And then we have just this cascade of illness, from the
yes,
personal to the collective to the environmental, that came from that
absolutely.
choice. And so when you say, you know, working with the land, working with food, both in the direct production of food through gardening and then in the, you know, consuming of food in a particular way, that that has the ability to heal all of us. Like, I believe that. I don't think that's hyperbole at all. It's like, it's what we can control. You know,
Exactly, correct. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it brings our mind, if we think about some of the principles that are operating within the system of Reiki and within many other systems of spiritual practice, being present right here, right now is often a central one, right? We look at
Yeah,
the precepts, just for today, just for this moment, right?
exactly.
I'm not attached to fear and anger, right? So that 22-year-old me who was so attached to fear and anger, like in the garden, I didn't have to be. I can be grateful, I can be diligent, I can be compassionate. um, that we make that bridge from the physical to the mental, the emotional, the spiritual when we're in that direct relationship with the earth. So, this process that we're describing, it really, for me in my life has been the thing that has brought me the most directly and consistently to this state of mind that I call being grounded, being spacious, and being connected. And that's really associated with the system of Reiki from its Japanese origins with this three diamonds model, right? That we begin with grounding at the earth, then we can move into spaciousness above and around us, within us, and then to connection with all of life. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious, like when you think about that map, if you will, being grounded, spacious, and connected, I wonder if there are things about your experience with the garden and with energy work that have specifically impacted you around being grounded, spacious, and connected, and possibly others that you're working with as well.
Okay, yeah. So when you say it that way, I am seeing the cycle that I have gone through spiritually. Well, not so it's not just even spiritual. So like being grounded, if you go to like even the grinding, the science on grounding, because like there's like research and everything being done on it. Gardening is actually a grounding practice that the electricity from the earth is like actually coming to you if you sit on the earth, if you go to the beach. So like getting actually in the soil with the microbes, and actually you're actually literally like being grounded, which it brings the body at ease to well-being. And when the body, so because our souls, it's yeah, it's all about being centered. So it's when our bodies are at well-being and physically we are at well-being, I believe that's when we reach that highest vibration. So it gets the physical and the spiritual is definitely connected. So the actual physical grounding, bringing your body to well-being, brings your energy
Yeah.
into that high vibration. So that's how I'm seeing, like, digging in the dirt as actually the physical grinding, which actually it does ground you, and even like your energy, your focus. When you are in the dirt, when you're in the garden, you're present at
Yeah.
what is growing and what is going on, which is also, being grounded. And the the spaciousness, it really comes to me just that, because I'm more of a left to brain. I'm very logical, I like the research, I like the science,
Yeah.
and that's really what brought me into the energy work, seeing that, everything is just all connected. The spacious, and I saw it so good because then the connected was with the heart. But oh geez, I had it in my mind at first how I connected with the spacious part of it, but and it escapes me now. But with the connection, it's that healing, that being in the garden, the connection, I was going to talk about it from the heart space, like opening up your heart chakras, like your heart really expands, just being
Absolutely.
out in nature, being in the garden. But it's also is an activity for actual human, authentic human connection, coming around food, growing food, sharing food with each other. Yeah, that's even another form of connection.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love that you touched on both sides of that, right? Like the connection to the web of life is how I often talk about, it, right? That sense in our body that we're not just this isolated, alone, individual. We have our individual experience, we have our own sovereignty, but we are also networked. We're also connected with life. And then the way in which these activities bring us into healthy, well connection with other people, right? Because food is well understood to be the most communal aspect of our lives, right? We come together around the hearth, around the kitchen, around the garden. So I love, again, highlighting the physicality and the spirituality of this act. And I think that's why I often, as I said in the beginning, see gardening as this like, it's almost this hack that we can use, this shortcut to
Exactly.
like getting to spiritual experiences. And I mean like day-to-day living experiences. Like it's wonderful to have a flash of spiritual insight and a moment of meditation, right? Or even a long-term, feeling of meditative insight. And if we can't bring that into our day to day, right, to our daily interactions, then it's of limited value to us. And being in the garden and then being in the communal nature of working with food, for me has been such a easeful way to be present to my spirituality in the day to day. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The key is being present. It's, yeah, is everything else, the everything else is an illusion. The only thing that's real right now is the moment. So that's key to a lot of healing and a lot of the just be here. Don't be anywhere else. Don't, be with the fear. Don't be with with the anger, with the resentment. Don't be with that.
Yeah.
Just be here. Just right
Well, and
here.
that's such a powerful message for, modern people. I think for a long time, humanity has really prioritized the mind and privileged the mind and
Yeah.
thinking and problem solving and creative nature here in the mind,
Mhm.
which is great. Our minds are amazing. We can do incredible
Yeah, we
things
need the
on
masculine energy and we also need
exactly.
the feminine energy. Yes.
Right, because it's been we've dissociated from that more body-based,
Yes.
communal, collaborative, we could identify that as feminine energy. And this came up in one of the last of these conversations I had. I actually got to interview my dad when I was visiting him in Pennsylvania, and he came to gardening when he retired, and it was like this voracious like need to get in the ground after a
Exactly.
lifetime of being completely in his mind, like totally
Exactly.
cerebral, total like thinker, worked at a university, writes music, like just in his mind profoundly. And this urgency to get into his body. And what he described is just what you're saying, that it was like it was the first time that he could easily slip into the present moment and just be with what is happening right here and not be in the past or the future. That really struck me, is like, yeah, that is a particular medicine of the
It is.
garden
That's
that
amazing. That's
we
amazing.
need. And
Exactly.
that makes me curious, right? So, doing your work with other folks, you talked about working with a whole foods plant-based diet and with energy work with overwhelmed adults who want to bring more well-being into their day-to-day. So I'd
Yeah.
love for you to talk just a little bit about how you do that. Like, what does your work look like? Maybe it's evolving, maybe it's fluid, but just in general terms or maybe specific terms, how do you go about doing this work with folks?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it has evolved, and so now I'm at the point the vision is clear. So I offer a garden service, a vegetable garden service program. So I will come and set up because they're busy, they're overworked, they want to get out there, they want to get in it, but they just don't have time to set it up and figure it out.
Oh, that's
So you
brilliant.
don't have to set it up, figure it out. I will come set it up, figure it out for you, plan for you. And if you want me to, for a subscription fee, I will come and maintain it for you, and you can just, eat the fruits of the labor. So that's one way. Is getting professionals, say, because there's a lot of people who actually they want to start a garden, but there's so much going on that to actually figure it out, like, nope, hey, just pay me to do it. I'll do it, and we'll get you, we'll get you started. So there's that. And I sell whole food, plant-based food. So I have a seitan mix. So seitan, for people who don't know, it is a meat substitute. So I'm actually like selling products. So go to my website, livinggreengarden.com, go to store. You can order seitan mix. I have this hibiscus mint tea, which that is actually my #1 seller. Like that, I've been going to farmers markets and different events, and that sells out. And hibiscus is good for high blood pressure. It's good for cholesterol. It promotes weight loss. Like, it is delicious. And that's the thing with the foods. I believe I have a cookbook out too. So it's the food needs to be delicious, because if it doesn't taste good, people are not going to eat it. So to get, Bobby to eat his vegetables, you used to put like sugar. My mom used to put sugar on the greens for me to eat the greens. Yeah. So this is making foods, plant-based foods, taste very, very good. And it promotes your health, and you're satiated. So I have products. So go to my website, you'll see that. And yeah, and I also have like herbal products. I do oregano oil, and also oils for the chakras. There's one you can't ask me what's in it right now, because I can't remember. There's so much stuff in his head. But I have one for the solar plex, to bring in joy, to set an intention and want to open up your third eye chakra. And using herbs and intention energy to create those products. So, and it's all about getting people it's holistic plant-based healing, but really to get people to their highest vibration, which is peace. Is to get people to well-being and peace. Peace on earth. That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Can I just say how much
objective? Peace on earth.
Peace on earth. I'm here for it. Actually, I had a colleague. I still have. We're not. We don't live in the same space anymore. We used to work together a lot. And she was a former Olympian and did a lot of work around peace. But she, just similarly, she's like, I work with kids, like kids in my neighborhood, but the goal is world peace. Like, and there is a direct line. Like, there is a direct line here, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And she was the first person that I've ever met, maybe the only person, who's like, I fully believe that we can see world peace in my lifetime. And she's in her 70s now. And I'm like, just and she's like, I'm a realist. Like, I know that that there's a lot of stacked against us. Right. Yeah. But I believe that in the possibility of that. And I feel like this resonance with what you're sharing around like possibility and flexibility, and like, let's really work with what is in our sphere of influence. Let's reduce the overwhelm about that. And so that we can be in the work instead of being in this frozen place. And so like,
like we can make a decision. No, we're not going to do this anymore. We choose peace, period. Exactly. Just decide peace. Your next action, is it of peace? If it's not, choose peace.
Yeah.
Where is peace? We need to be peace. We need to be at peace.
Absolutely.
Choose peace.
And to have people like speaking that message from all perspectives of life, right? So you're speaking that message from the perspective of food, primarily, in other realms as well. To have that message come from like, it's not about just, because a lot of times I think we get stuck in, peace work or activism work or work that's going to change the world. Like, that's overwhelming, right? And that has to be global based work, right?
Yeah, there's a place
this is what I can change right here.
Right.
Like,
yeah, and your actions, but just always choose peace.
Exactly.
If everyone did that, we would be at peace. Just choose peace.
Yeah. And so for you to be focusing on not just food, but on reducing overwhelm around food, because I've heard this from people, right? I wish I could garden, but I don't have the time. I don't know where to start. Like, as I said, I didn't grow up with gardening. So when I started it,
Right,
I was like, I mean, I was so desperate to do it that like I just figured it out. But like for a lot of
right.
folks, I don't know how to do this right, how to do it well. And
Exactly.
it takes some time to like, this was a mindset that I had to step into, especially most recently when I kind of circled back to doing serious gardening a few years ago, is like the garden is forgiving and it's cyclical. And like we're gonna make mistakes and it's not gonna be right. And then guess what? The springtime comes again and we try it again, And
Yeah. And
and so for you to say, look, I will step in and put in the infrastructure and get the soil right and make sure you have what you need and to like think about what you want out of your space and
right,
what
exactly.
resources you have available and to kind of think through a lot of those logistics because that's where my mind lives, right? That's where
Right.
my focus is so that you can focus on what you're doing, but then you can come to the garden on your own terms when you want to.
Right,
Like
exactly.
and this
Exactly.
idea of being a flexitarian, right? Not only in your own diet, but in like in that offering, like there's this incredible flexibility of like
Yeah,
just be with a garden to the degree that it suits you, you know?
exactly. Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Geez, I wish I was as eloquent. Yeah, well said. That's exactly that.
No, I mean, I love the way that you speak about your work. As I said, I've been binge watching your YouTube videos. Y'all, she's also got a YouTube channel, so we'll
Oh,
put that
yes,
link down below,
please.
right? We're both in this game of sharing with the masses.
Yes.
I also, just side note, shameless self promotion, recently started a gardening channel because I didn't want this channel to get
Oh, very
too like
good.
muddy. So I now have HeartScapes Urban Homestead as a YouTube channel. It's a teeny tiny little baby channel right now. So everybody go like and subscribe. Um, but back to flexitarian and just expressing, what you're up to. I love the like seamless way you move through like, hey, let me show you how I cook a pizza. And like, this is how this relates to my worldview. And this is how this relates to how we're
Oh, do
going.
I do that on because I just be talking? Do I do that on
You
YouTube?
do, you do.
Oh, okay, it's good to know because that's I don't do like because yeah, I just be
And I
talking.
think that's one of the beauties of this medium, right? Is like we just kind of get to show up and be ourselves. And so
Yeah,
these things
I
that like
love it.
it's the day to day, but it's also our values, that
Exactly.
get expressed when we're in that space. Um, and I wanted to just circle back to this idea of being a flexitarian. You kind of spoke to this a little bit when you were describing your health journey, is this
Mhm.
idea of like listening to our body in terms of what it needs to be well. And that there, it's helpful to have a way of eating, a code that somebody else has kind of worked out and has kind of worked out the science, and there's going to be times when your body is going to dictate something else, right? So you're saying I eat
Absolutely.
meat, I'm guessing when your body's like I need that today, and
Yeah,
on other days,
yeah, yeah. I trust my body. That's yeah, exactly.
and that's again, so much of I think the dis-ease of our modern experience is that we haven't been taught to trust our body. We've been taught to trust experts. We've been taught to trust the media. We've been taught to trust, what we find in books. And these are all valuable resources. But ultimately, like people come to wisdom through their experiences. And so, our being, which is grounded, spacious, and connected, which is connected to the web of life, which is nature, knows what we need. The thing is, we've forgotten how to listen, how to feel it, how to know it. And so, being with the garden, being with plants, being with the cycles of nature, which are always changing, that kind of demonstrate that we're not going to need the same thing from day to day because the world doesn't need the same thing from day to day, right? It can help us reorient to like, what am I needing right now?
Exactly. Yes. And it's that practice of going within instead of going externally, instead of going outside of yourself, to go within yourself to know what you need. Because the body knows. We just be like, I know you don't. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
us.
so
Yeah, we
often.
be messing everything up.
Yeah, So often. And it's also challenging to discern, when our body is sending us a craving or an impulse that's coming from a diswell place, an unwell place, versus a natural impulse that's coming from the healing place that we want to get to. So it's like that's a discernment that we can absolutely learn to make.
And that's something that I'm actually still learning. So with me being a flexitarian and me, like, if I allow myself to like have like what I want, but but everything is a balance and is a flow. So if I stay on what I call the flexing a bit too much, then on, for me, a whole food plant-based diet is my center point, then my numbers start to change. My doctor's like, oh, your numbers are rising. But
Right.
then I'm like, oh, okay, it's time to put things into balance. So that is a dance that I'm always doing. So like now I feel like I've been flexing too much. So I'm about to start eating more whole food. So like,
Well,
yeah.
and we talk about this in our Reiki practice all the time. And this is another kind of piece that's really strong for my teachers, this that our practice needs to be both firm and flexible. And that's our Reiki practice, but it's our life, right? Like it's a life thing. And so that's what you're speaking to, right? You have the firmness of the container of a whole food plant-based diet, and then you have the flexibility of what your body needs day to day. And sometimes that inflexibility
Yeah.
includes cravings that are maybe not in the best
I
of
might get a
interest, but
quickie.
then you get to make those choices too, right? And then coming back to that structure, to that firmness. And it sounds like that's part of what you're offering other folks, is like, here's how to think about what your home base is, your center is. And then here's how to really, be vibrant inside of that. As you said, make it delicious, right? Make it vibrant. And
Absolutely.
be aware of where our influences are coming from. I mean, an example of where kind of I saw you bring like values and teaching into a cooking video, with that video about making pizza, you talked about how totally common it is to load up store-bought tomato sauce with sugar, and how so many products that we buy off the shelf are just loaded with sugar. Well, why is that? Because sugar is an addictive substance, and that is known, right? It's known that we're going to crave that thing if it gives us that sugar hit, and
Yeah.
that's, unfortunately, that's known and understood by manufacturers, and in many cases exploited, not in all cases. Um, but that we
Yeah,
get
but
to make choices about that.
yeah, what's particular with the sugar, like thinking, oh, and forgive me, I live by a train track. Like it's really the refined sugar. Like, so cane sugar, you don't see people getting like addicted or even overeat products made with cane sugar or maple syrup,
Syrup,
like
yeah,
a
honey.
natural type of sugar. But it's the refined sugar, like the refined flour, that has that addictive quality. And that's what it's, the refinedness. So I know people are anti-sugar. I'm not anti-sugar. I believe natural sugar, our body knows how to process that without getting addicted.
Yep.
But it's the refined stuff, the man-made remake, that our body is like, yeah, it's I'm gonna say it's like crack. Yeah, it's white. It's, yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, manufactured.
And
Yeah,
it's like, we're not going to go off on the diet industry, but there is a tendency to have to make a villain, right? So sometimes sugar is the villain, or fat is the villain,
right,
or carbs are the villain. It's like the
right.
villain is not understanding that food is a holistic system and our body is a holistic system, and they have a very particular relationship. And you can't
Correct.
just subtract one of these major things out, right? It's
There's
like,
a reason why, like, people are still having these problems. Yeah, the body is going to respond when you eliminate something, but the body needs that something. Like, we actually need carbs. We evolved to need carbs. We actually need protein. We actually need fat, maybe not the manufactured fat, but the natural fats in nature. People didn't get fat eating avocados and nuts in nature.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously we could geek out for like a long, long
Oh, oh
time
no.
about the
Oh no.
particulars of food
Absolutely.
science. And it's like I'm so with you on, like, I love to know the sciencey part, and then also the like experiential part, right? But I think, like, just for this conversation, the idea that being in relationship with nature, with the world, with our food is
Absolutely.
essential. Like, when it comes down to it, living a connected life means relationships. And we've accepted a reality in our culture that says you don't have to have a relationship with your food,
Exactly.
right? That the relationship doesn't matter, right? And I strongly disagree. And I am a meat eater, and the choice that I've made to kind of align that appetite and that way that my body needs to be with my values is to, as much as possible, grow my own meat and be in relationship with farmers who do. And I'll just share that I picked up some beef from a neighbor who raises beef, and I asked her, tell me about the animal, and she told me the story of the animal. And so
Yeah.
then at dinner, I told that story to my kids, and it was like, it wasn't, there was a somberness to it, but it wasn't a sad story. It was like, this is the relationship that we're in with this living being, and that living being mattered. And it's a privilege to know the story of that being. And we can have that relationship with plants. We can have it with the food that we make with our own hand. So if somebody purchases the mix from you, then they get to be in relationship with you. They get to be in relationship with the ingredients, and then with how they serve that. There's lots of ways to be in relationship with our food, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, you bought beef from your neighbor because your neighbor happens to raise beef. But if we even just start with the premise that being in relationship with our food matters, we can cultivate that relationship with grocery store bought food,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? Even like the tradition of saying a prayer over dinner, or, thanking the hands that brought it to us, right? Like, that's a form of relationship, and that matters.
Mhm.
It really does. And so when I see, people doing work the way that you are, right, making it easier for people to build that relationship, it just gives me joy. Yeah. And I'd love to end with two questions, actually. We're going to, of course, put all of the ways that folks can connect with you, folks in your, you know what, you have a very local based business, but then also an online business with the products. I love that people can connect with you both ways, but we don't know what local is. So where are you gardening and offering these services?
Yeah, so I am in Northwest Indiana, the Chicagoland area. So I service Northwest Indiana and South Chicago suburbs. So y'all livegreengarden.com. Check me out. Yeah. So and depend and I'll come to South Chicago. Yeah, I'll come to South Chicago and a little bit of Michigan too. So I live on the tip of the lake. So I get Michigan. Michigan is like a half hour, about 40 minutes for me. And Illinois is about 40 minutes for me. So
Oh, I
like
love
I
it.
get
I
I
love
get 3 states.
That's so good.
So, so you all, yeah, come check me out and let's get you gardening. Let's get you connected to your plants. So
Absolutely.
that's where I'm at, Northwest Indiana.
So I have two final questions. One, these days, what is your favorite thing to cook and eat? Which is really what it comes down to. What's your favorite thing to eat these days?
My favorite. Oh, geez, you asked me. Well, so all right. As of today, it's not because now I'm not flexing as much. I put it in my brain, so now my baby. But yesterday it was, and I did this 3 days in a row. Me flexing, McDonald's cheeseburger and an apple pie. Y'all, I don't know. It's just where my heart was for 3 days. So yes, but as of today,
Love it.
no, today my body is ready for a cleaner diet now. So now it would be fruit
Love it.
as
I
of
love it.
today.
I love
Yeah,
it.
we're going to the
Oh,
cleaner
man.
now.
And then finally, I'd love to just ask, what's one thing that's bringing you joy these days? It can be a teeny tiny thing, it can be a big thing. What's bringing you joy?
I have to say, actually, uh, doing work in my business, it really does. Like, I was thinking about this, and it's like, yeah, being outside, sitting on the ground, yeah, that brings me joy. Sitting peacefully and just getting out of my head and getting my breath, that brings me joy. But what really lights up my soul is being in business. Even like all of like, it is showing me how tough I am. It's like really pushing me to like, um, another level of myself, and I'm loving it. Like, yeah, sometimes she knocks me in the face and I'm like, oh, that hurt. Ah, but then I get back up in the ring and I'm like, okay, I'm going.
I
And
love
so I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. And one of my best brother friend, because I was like talking about, some of the challenges with being in the business, but I like challenges. So this gives me all of that. And he was like, oh, because I think she had slapped me a couple times. He was like, oh, this is your story.
it.
So that helped me. I'm like, okay, I'm in this story and I'm having a fabulous time. Yeah, I am growing as a human being, y'all, with this business, but I'm enjoying it. Seriously.
I'm gonna receive that as some much needed medicine. As I shared, I've been feeling a little bit
Oh yeah, man. Like,
exhausted in my business, a little bit frustrated in my business. So I'm gonna take that piece of your story into my heart as inspiration
mm,
to see that joy and that excitement that you've got.
yes,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Gosh, when I think about it, so we're recording this the day after the fall equinox, so happy fall. Um, and what that means on my little tiny patch of earth here in the territory of the Maidu people in Davis, California, is that the sun is no longer in the morning beaming right onto my sitting bench in the garden, which makes
Mm,
it very unpleasant to sit there in the morning. It's now just tucked behind my house, and in the morning it's a little bit chilly. And so this is my favorite time. I need like a slow ramp in the morning. Like I need to like
yeah.
slowly get into it. And so getting a coffee, getting a book, sitting on that bench, it's cool. I bundle up and then I'm able to just be present in the garden is one of my favorite things. And this time of year is when that's the most pleasurable to do. And it's just not even really possible in the summer because it's just like sun.
Oh, guys,
So yeah,
yeah.
that's what's bringing me joy today.
I love that.
Yeah,
Love that. It's beautiful.
good, good. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I look forward to continuing to follow your work, to trying some of your products, to continue watching your YouTube videos. I feel a lot of kinship and a lot of inspiration with the work that you're up to in the world and just with your enthusiasm about it in general. So I'm really glad to have been able to connect with all of that and to connect you with those who will join us on this video. So friends, if you have questions for Libre about her work, if you are longing to get in the garden and you don't know where to start, even if you're not in the Chicago area, who knows, maybe you could pay her for an on the phone consult. You never know. I don't
That's
know.
actually where I started. I evolved. Yes, I definitely
Right.
do Zoom consultations.
There
Yes,
you go.
exactly.
There you go. All things are possible.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear your own stories of being in the garden, what it has meant to you to interface, to be in relationship in any way that's meaningful with your food and with the natural world. Please do share that down below. And as you go through your day, as you build these relationships with the world around you, may you be deeply provisioned for that journey. Thanks so much for joining us. We love you. Bye bye.
Bye.